Sharp Game here, coming at you from chooseyourrelationships.com. The other day, somebody asked me a question that no one ever asked me. And she said, is being with a man, being monogamous with a man, is it realistic? Is it practical? No one ever asked me a question like that. Does it really happen? Do guys really get married or get in relationships and stick with one woman for the rest of their life? Think about that for a second. I mean, imagine you getting married at 30 years old to a woman, and you're going to be with the same woman for the next 30, 40, 50 years. However little time you have to live on this planet. Does it really happen? Is it really practical to think that way? Is it really productive to think that way? And I wish it was a simple answer. Based on my experience, the answer is yes and no. Unfortunately, because based on the environment that we live in the United States of America. You know, in the United States of America, it's a very toxic environment to live in, socially. And it's a very dysfunctional environment to live in amongst people. Now, some people would say, well, black people are dysfunctional. They're the most dysfunctional people in American society. And, you know, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Who did black people learn these types of behavior from? Because most black people, you have to remember, most black people follow the people that's in the dominant society. Because the people in the dominant society set the standards for the rest of us. Think about it. Most black people are following success. They're not creating anything. They're not creating their own rules. They're not living by their own rules. They're looking around, picturing what everyone else is doing, and they want that. They're trying to get that. So you got I know a lot of women, and I know some women personally have gotten married, and even some that haven't gotten married yet. They feel like they're looking for the perfect guy, whatever that means, that's going to get married to them, and he's going to be with her and only her for the rest of her life, and he's not going to even think about looking at another woman or be tempted about being with another woman. I know some women that actually think like this. And that, if you really think about it, that way of thinking is very irrational. And it's very egotistical. You know, how big of an ego, you know how much of an ego you have to think like that? You have to really be kind of delusional to really think like. You have to really be brainwashed. You have to have bought into an idea that somebody else gave to you. And a lot of these ideas stems from religion. And I always say that when you hear these rhetoric or ideas being put out to the public through television or newspapers or magazines, you have to always keep in mind, who's the messenger? Where is it coming from? Whether it's a preacher, an entertainer, a CEO of a company, you have to always ask yourself, who's the messenger? Because I can almost guarantee you that these people are not living like that. They're not thinking like that. They want to put the message out to you to be that way, but they're not doing that. They're not living like that at all. I mean, I didn't even notice until I went in the military, and you know, about my second year in the military, I discovered that, you know, this thing ain't what I thought it was. That's one reason why I got out. This thing ain't what I thought it was. I thought we were like, I really believe that we were serving our country. We were doing the greater good in society. But no, we're not serving no country. We're just serving the best interests of a handful of bankers and people that's on foreign policy, a group of people that's in charge of foreign policy, and Wall Street bankers. That's all we're doing, and we're just taking orders. Basically, anybody that's in the military, they're just taking orders. They don't really know why they're invading these other countries. As a matter of fact, if you talk to a lot of these guys that's in the Marines or Air Force or Army, at some point, they don't even know why they're in these countries. At some point, they probably ask themselves, why are we here? Because in the military, you don't really get to ask questions very much until after the fact, until everything is done and you're on your way out. Because you really don't have time to think, because there's too much going on. Because if you had time to think, you'd probably be killed. Because you really don't have time to think. You just got to do what you're supposed to do to survive at that given moment or at that given time. Really. So, I mean, the way I see it when it comes to being monogamous, the average guy that has influence or that's well known in your town or your city that have charm and charisma, and maybe he's helping a lot of people, a guy like that is probably needs more than one woman. Physically. I'm talking about just on a physical level. I'm not talking about just getting married to her or anything like that. I'm talking about just on a physical level. A guy like that probably needs more than one woman. Now, when it comes to celebrities, of course they're gonna have most celebrities. Of course they're gonna need more than one woman, or they're gonna be with more than one woman. Because I think that comes with the territory. If you're a celebrity or entertainer, that's just my perspective. I think that comes with the territory, based on from what I've seen in my experience from being around entertainers. But there are some guys that women can control, and this is a very small percentage of guys that do stick with one woman. But this guy is just an average guy. Average guy meaning he doesn't really travel anywhere, never really been anywhere, doesn't really do anything spectacular, anything that's interesting. He just go to work 5 days a week, come home, look at TV, eat, sleep, do the same thing over the next day. On the weekends, the wife got him running all over the place. He's helping take care of the kids. He's cutting the grass. He's doing stuff out in the yard. He, spend time with the family during the holidays. That's it. He does that same routine 5, 10, 20 years. But he's never been out of the country. He doesn't really, if he go anywhere, he might go one state over or maybe 2 states over. Tops. That's it. He never been out of the country before. Probably don't have the money because he has too many kids and don't have enough income coming in. But the wife, she'll take off and go. She'll do most of the traveling. But he has to stay home because she says so. And, these women, they control those types of guys. He's tameable. Well, that's the average guy. That's what I mean when I say average. So the average guy like that is probably gonna be with one woman. More than likely. It's highly unlikely he's gonna be or seek out to be with another woman. But there's always an exception to the rule, but it's highly unlikely. But a guy that's a celebrity, entertainer, an athlete, they probably gonna have more than one woman. I think it comes with the territory. This is my perspective. That's how I see it based on my experience. And then you have the other guys that's traveled and had different experiences. They done seen a lot. They done experienced a lot. They've had a lot of trials and tribulations and failures. He might not seek out to have more than one woman, but it's gonna be in his face. It's gonna be there. It's always gonna be an option. And I'm not saying anything wrong with having more than one woman, by the way. I'm just saying that a lot of women are kind of a little out of touch or with reality. They want to see things the way they want to see it instead of seeing things the way it is and being practical. Because some women will say, the reason why he can't stick with one woman because he need to grow up. I disagree with that. Because if that was the case, everybody would be doing that. If you have to be practical. Because most families that are well off or wealthy or rich, they're not following that type of logic. They're not telling their kids to follow that way of thinking like everybody else is. It's like I always say, the person that marries you, the preachers or the judges, if you got married at the courthouse, they're not following the logic that they tell you, that they read off to you, until death do us part and all that crap. They're not following like that logic. They're not living like that. So my question to you is, why do you think that is? I mean, that just because somebody gives you some ideas on paper or read it off to you, that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. This is why I always say you have to do what works for you, not what worked for your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents. You have to do what works for you and your family, and you have to you should want to leave a legacy and be known leave a legacy behind that you be proud of and not ashamed of. But if you're trying to do what your parents did or your grandparents did, it's almost guaranteed that your relationships are going to fail. But in the end, like I always say, most of the relationship problems, it comes down to you. Who you are as a person, as a man. Because once you know who you are, women that are down with you, either they're going to get in or get out. It's that simple. Either they're in or out. You shouldn't have to convince women to be down with you or talk them into anything. Who has time for that? Do you really have time for that? I don't. So either they're in or they're out. And if they're not, it's okay. Because they're just a number. They're just a number. That's it. That's why they have social security numbers. Because every country, you're just a number. So they're just a number in the universe. And you can always meet another one. That has to be your mindset, your attitude, your way of thinking. So if you like what you heard, subscribe to my channel. Check out my blog, chooseyourrelationships.com. And if you want to become a Patreon, the link is going to be below this video. So until next time, Sharp Kim is out. Peace.